back on.
Oh, that never gets old. Okay. All right. So we're back. Basically, what I have up on the screen here is one of our pieces of art that's featured in the Paladin deck. It's actually a card that you didn't get to see on stream in that last game, um, but it's the Paladin block, right? We can actually pull up exactly what that card is. That would be the
Divine or Devout Aegis.
yes, Devout Aegis. This is actually one that is not on the card image gallery. So let me just pull that up for you guys so you can see exactly what that card is. Right here. Okay. So this is a block that Sean had access to. He probably just didn't have an opportunity where it made sense to play it. But ultimately, what the card is it's a 3-cost block that has power equal to the highest faith requirement. So if you remember, there was a card in the Volcanic Warrior deck where it had power equal to the highest aggression count in the discard pile. The Paladin has a block in the same vein where its total power is equal to faith in the discard. Right. So in this piece of art in particular, what you're seeing is our pirate fighting against our paladin. One of the things that we talked about in our mage unboxing is that we have a lot of cards that have overlapping pieces of art. And we did that very intentionally as a way to kind of help you, when you're learning the game, understand what cards make good plays. So an example here is that we have a pirate attack going up against this paladin block. And so if you happen to be playing the Death Pirate versus the Divine Paladin, then these two arts will actually line up as you're playing over the course of the game.
Yeah. As far as also just a heads up, I know there's been some conversation on the channel here. If you have a question, go ahead and just drop it in. Can we zoom into where the paladin should have had a handlebar mustache? It would have been glorious. So there's not a handlebar mustache on the paladin in this image. Astro Grover, just fair warning. But yeah, I want to go through these, and I'll be taking questions.
I could kind of see how that would fit.
It could work, but at this time, Dustin is Dustin is not having a handlebar mustache at this time. Let's see. We got another one. Also, I like the continuation art of Forgotten Scroll and Cosmic Edge are the same. Shame. Anyway. Sorry, I'm just going to keep going for there. Yeah, so
I can pull that one up. So that's the next one that you guys would like to check out would be the...
Old West Dustin.
Which one was that? The items, the mage items. So here is the full art of the mage.
Okay. Ant, did you want to go and walk through design ideas behind it? Like why Dustin has what's on his shoulder or anything like that? Or are we not going to...
We can,
okay.
But we're gonna. I mean, there are so many different pieces of art
that
have
true.
The same thing, so we can probably save that. I'd rather go through the ones that they're interested in first.
Cool. Okay.
So yeah, this is our mage, cosmic mage, right?
Mm-hmm.
All 7 of our classes have box art that was done in a similar style. They're all done by the same artist. Her name is Melody Nejad. She did these images in like a tarot card kind of style. So we have one of these for each one of our classes. And one of her requirements was that within the image, she had to capture 2 different items that we knew we wanted to include in the game. And so to Blue Counterspell's point, this piece of art is actually used for Forgotten Scroll as well as the card Cosmic Edge. And so if you look, you can see the top half is the Forgotten Scroll art. The bottom half is the Cosmic Edge art. And really that's done so that when you have both of those equipment on the table in front of you, you feel like the complete mage. What's really fun is when you start mixing the decks together, you can take like the top half of the pirate and combine it with the bottom half of the mage, and now you have like a mage pirate, right? Or you can do the top half of the warrior and the bottom half of the assassin, and now you kind of have a, volcanic assassin. And so we tried to make it in this way where you can mix and match the different equipment and create your own class.
Then you have a Voltron. Yes.
Yeah. So if you can figure out a way to have infinite gold, you can totally Voltron, a whole bunch of equipment.
And again, the game is extremely modular in a way that you could, if your table group says, "Oh, let's sit down and go for 60 gold as our limit," go for it. You can totally Voltron everything up. But the Mage, the Forgotten Scroll, it can pair really well also with other classes too. So, yeah.
Yep. So, are there other ones that you guys have pulled up that you'd like to see? Any in particular on the image gallery? The 1% play with the 60 gold. It happens. I mean, really, the true 1% deck would be the 6th blade, because the 6th blade actually just has one item, and that one single item is 30 gold. So while every other class, they split their gold amongst a bunch of different items, the golem just carries around like, the Mercedes of swords. It's just like the best possible sword that you can have in the game as of right now.
Yeah. So Blue Counterspell asks, so the designers, as designers, why choose the art type? So to get to your question there, the motifs, the genres of art, we wanted to appeal to a broad category. There's multiple pieces in here that thematically feel completely different. So these tarot card style pieces feel thematically different than that first image you saw with the Devout Aegis and the Pirates Impairing Strike. They feel totally different, and it's done that way on purpose, because what happens is we want to make sure that the community develops in a way that they enjoy, and people that enjoy all types of art styles have their pick to go to, and we don't want to not be inclusive of that. So we really spanned the breadth of art styles. There is a style in general that we most of the cards are designed in. It was just one of the styles we felt fit the fantasy genre. And when we went and vetted artists through, I think we talked about this in one of our previous not podcasts, streams, excuse me, yeah. One of our previous streams, we talked about how we kind of chose artists. We would go and hunt around ArtStation, basically look for established artists, look for upcoming artists, look for artists who basically felt like would represent what we were in our heads we had well. And there are some, artists, we would provide them with skeletons of essentially what we were looking for, just as Ant was talking to with what the melody had to do for these pieces. Like they had to have the weapons and the items already there, and there were certain restrictions. But we also had a free form to the piece. So.
Right. So basically, so another example, right? So if we look at this is the golem, or this is the 6th blade, right? Who's this kind of like golem creature who carries a sword around, right? And if we go to, for example, the art for Parry, or that's what we called it, right? Parry at the time. Really, this is the card Shirahadori Strike. And you can see the art style is totally different, because this is a totally different artist. This is much more gritty and detailed, with kind of like a painterly style to it. But it's still the same character. It's still the 6th blade, being the individual performing the actions. So what we aimed for was consistency in form, in terms of when you saw the character in the images, it looked like the same consistent character as like a throughput. But we really allowed our artists the freedom to interpret those characters in their own style. So rather than have, 8 different cards that all had the exact same character on them every single time, what you're getting is different interpretations of the same character.
To Astro Groover has a question: are the different artistic styles from different or all different artists? My grammar was awful there. Skip to the middle portion. So I think what you're asking is, are each artist a different style? Not necessarily. Some artists are the same style, and then we have some artists, like I believe his name is Joseph Kim, who we provided multiple different opportunities, and each time we got back a different style. And I think that that's what you're asking there.
Yep. Yeah. So, for example, we have the individual who worked on this is the Shadow Assassin Ultimate. This is Serrated Venom, right? Her style is very similar on the other cards that she worked on. So she worked on the card Stasis as well. So if I were to pull that one up, you'll see it's very similar in terms of overall vibe, right? So this is Stasis. And then also the card that we saw today from Sean was this Paladin card, right? And so these are all the same artist. They're all done in a similar visual style, but they're depicting different characters, right? So sometimes what we did in order to kind of tie the decks together a little bit is we had the artist give us kind of like a similar scene in a similar style, but showing a completely different character. And so that way we can kind of see that artist's interpretation of the Paladin, of the Assassin, of the Mage, right? Versus other artists, and that's similar to like what we asked Melody to do with, give us all 7 of our characters in your, tarot style, right? Other things that we did was, had them do the same character in multiple poses. And so for, example, Decapitate, right? The artist who did Decapitate, Robson, he also worked on other warrior cards, right? So he got to kind of work on developing exactly what this volcanic warrior looked like, and kind of like the look and feel and the heaviness of the helmet, while also working on kind of what the volcanic warrior magic might look like. So these are both in his style. They're both the same artist. They're both in the same deck, but they're very different in tone. One is a very physical action. One is a magic-oriented action. So one thing that we really, really tried to do was make sure that no artist was doing the same thing twice, just to keep everything fresh. So like, if they worked on something magical, we gave them something physical the next time. If they worked on something for the Paladin, we gave them something for the Monk or the Mage or whatever, to just kind of keep it fresh, so you never felt like you were just looking at the same thing over and over again.
And feedback was really important also from the artists. So we didn't want anyone to get burnt out on anything.
Right. And so we have An Alva saying hi. So hello. How are you? Is there any card in particular you would like to see? Let us know. And the other thing too is like another example of the artist thing. So we have this card, Counterstrike. So this is done by the same individual who did Shirahadori Strike, also in the 6th blade, right? But totally different in terms of composition, feel. This is a very kind of dark and also action oriented, open sword swing. There's a lot going on in the background. It feels much more open and airy composed or compared to that first one, which was like super compact, and had, basically just that one-on-one knight versus six blade thing going on. And then the third, this is Ricardo Emig, a gentleman, I believe he's from Germany. His third image is one of my favorites. I posted it to our Instagram the other day. Is this one here, which his style is a very kind of like sweeping, painterly. It's almost like kind of reminds me of like a Japanese, almost like ink painting style, but it's done with color. I don't know. It's amazing. But this one in particular, I think really speaks to the metal awesomeness that is the Volcanic Warrior.
Yeah, I this one I'd say, yeah, I don't pick favorites. Cough, cough, lies. But what I'll say is this was a very strong piece, and I really love that it does capture a more of a Western type feel to it, not American Western type feel to it.
Yeah, and one little tidbit. So when we got this sketch in, if you notice, there's like a bunch of arrows sticking out of his back, and I originally wanted to remove them because I wasn't quite sure that they were playing up the mechanic of the card correctly. I didn't know if it would cause any confusion or anything like that. And Sean was like, he's like, you know what? It's really awesome looking. Let's just keep it, especially for my cousin. My cousin Devin is gonna absolutely love this image, because at the time his cousin was playing this like crazy warrior in a D&D campaign, and so I was like, all right, screw it, and so we just left it in. and I'm really glad that we did, because like it adds so much more grit to this warrior, where he's just like able to withstand an incredible amount of pain, and is totally cool with it, because at the end of the day, if he's breathing and the enemy isn't, then he's won.
That's a win. Yeah.
So, what else? Oh, I was just gonna say, Blue Counterspell says, to Astro Grover's point, how do you think art will contribute to the total deck play of the game? This is in regard to story mode. With the story being part of the deck build, are we looking for adventure style with a deck? For like continuation, can we get limited due to design? Interesting.
So, do you want me to take that?
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm gonna pull up another image, or is there one in particular that you want me to pull
up?
Up?
So I was gonna say is we have a lot of the ultra realistic types, and so we can pull up those, the charmed or the for example one. The drowning dirge. Oh my goodness, just anything that Cecilia does. Yeah, so you can pull up those, and then I was going to say we can completely juxtapose that against something like Slice Them Up. But right. I'll go and I'll take real quick. And we can go to the comic style too, of Danielle. If I'm saying that right, I apologize.
I think it's Daniele. Come on, he's Italian.
Okay. But to take Blue Counterspell, your point, we want you to go and feel like you are the person doing the stuff. All the things that are going on, all the actions, you're doing them. So while yes, we can go and we can use these to narratively drive forward a story, and while that is something that later on down the line we would love to do, right now we want to try to go and get it in such a position that for this image, charmed, right? We have eventually down the line many different charms, and you can pick the one that best represents your character, because then you can feel like you're doing it. We don't want to go and make it so that way you feel ever stuck into a story that is not something that is you. I guess that's the best way I can say that. If that made sense, let me know. If not, and that didn't answer your question, hit us up still, and we'll try to better clarify. Um, Other than that, as I've said before on one of the other strings that we had, we are looking to story modes and PvE down the line. But right now, the game is sitting at a 1v1. So,
Right. Yeah, and so then the other thing. So again, what we just had up was hyper realistic, right? Like almost looked like a first person view of what you would see if you were charming an individual. She's carrying a rose towards the camera, but then we also tried to balance that with things that were very abstract and painterly looking. And so we have this battle between our mage and our monk. These images are featured on one of the mage's blocks. I'm going to pull up the exact name of the card here in a second. So this block in the mage deck is Reality Ripple. And in the monk deck, you actually saw me use this card. It's Wellspring of Wrath. So this is another one where we have this kind of like battle of two different characters. They're going at it. And the detail is much, you can see brushstrokes, like you can see the grit, you can see the different rocks and energy swirls and things like that. And we think that these images, they complement each other nicely, because if every image in every deck was hyper realistic all the time, then you would never stop and notice an individual image, right? But when you're looking at things that are more painterly and more brushstroke oriented, when you come back to something like this and you see it on a card, it really jumps out at you and grabs your attention. And likewise, when you're looking at something hyper realistic like this, when you go to something that's in more of like a comic-y, like a comic book kind of like gritty graphic novel style, it jumps out at you and it makes you pay attention. And that's something that we really wanted to do. We wanted you to really pay attention to the art, because our artists did an absolutely phenomenal job.
yeah, they killed it. In a good way, absolutely in a great way.
Like look at this. Like look at this.
Enraged. Oh, yeah.
Look at that. That's incredible. Like that's that's a background of a computer if I ever saw one. Like just so cool.
Even if you can pull up like the combat reflexes, like just that style, combat reflexes, twin strokes, either or, but those are also
I forget.
DLA.
The thing is, like, I have all of these images saved as like the playtest names, so I have no idea like what anything is. I'm just clicking randomly at this point.
Oh, okay, yeah. So here's a great one. This is Voidwalk, and it is part of the Assassin's Toolkit, and I just love the wisps. I love the hands. I love the wisps. I love how this axe looks like it's going through the guy, and there is nothing there, and the guy just is obviously unfazed because he's our assassin character,
right?
But,
yeah. One thing that we also had the kind of like freedom to do, because really when you think about it, Sean, this is just like Sean and I's project, right? Like we worked on this together, and we didn't have some like boss who told us what they wanted or said, hey, we have to meet this particular guide or whatever. Like we made the guide, like it was our decision. And so what we decided to do was, a lot of times when our artists would come back and they had ideas or they wanted to try something, we just let them do it. So rather than force a lot of our creative people to like fit an exact brief and say, no, you can only give me what I ask for, we would send the artist art descriptions like, hey, I want you to paint our assassin getting attacked, but the attack is going through their body because they're turning into smoke or something. And that's really it. And we just let the artists be artists. And so like the artist here, Artyom, he's from Russia. he replied to me and he was like, "Hey, I got a couple different options. I can cut him in half with a sword, or I can cut him in half with like a dagger." He's like, "Or I could use like a really big woodcutter axe." And I was just like, "Do the axe! Like the axe sounds so cool."
Dope.
And just like being able to give them that freedom allowed us to essentially work with our artists and have them supply us with some ideas that like Sean and I weren't even thinking of. Like
Yeah.
like I did not specifically ask to see our assassin cut in half by a giant axe that looks like it's made out of stone. Like that's the artist coming through. Like that's their creativity
Yeah.
coming out in every image, and I think that really helps uh the art
To
feel
that point,
more alive,
to that point, before I go and I take blue counterspells thing, if you can bring up Continuum Blade, because I want to explain how janky my original sketch when I sent this to Ant was, because it was comedy gold. Like
Yeah.
I drew a stick figure.
So
Um,
before you do that,
okay.
I did just want to say, to
Oh,
close what we were talking about before, there are other instances where we had such a clear idea of what we wanted in mind. Like I can vividly remember the phone call I had with Sean where I was like, "Hey, we need an ultimate kind of attack for the pirate,"
yeah.
and
Okay.
he was like, "Okay, I want to see Elliot um, paint the pirate on the beach in the surf, waves crashing behind her. She's got her sword out at the camera, a flare gun pointed to the sky, and as she's shooting it, a giant skeletal pirate ship is raising in the background." And I was
Yeah.
what? Like what?
I yeah,
And
that one.
I was so scared because I was just like, I don't even know how. Even if we get them to paint that, I don't know how we're gonna make a card do that. Like I just didn't even know how we would design that, but I was like, you know what? That's a cool challenge and it sounds awesome. So we sent her the brief. She absolutely knocked it out of the park. Like this is unbelievable image. And then it was kind of like on us to basically design something cool that fit this incredible art. And that's really how we came up with that idea of summoning a pirate ship that has shot counters on it, and it just like blasts you out of the water.
Yeah, so the pirate, I had a really hyper specific uh, idea in my head, and I wasn't like, Ant was like, "Well, what about this?" And I was just like, and he's like, "I don't know, man. I that's so specific." And I remember going and saying basically exactly as Ant just went through. I was like, "I want this, because I wanted the pirate to feel like she's dancing on the beach, the bulkhead, um, back against the surf, and her last option is basically to call cannonballs down on her." As she just dances around through the cannonballs. I remember saying, "I want a tango through cannonballs." And Ant's just like, what's going on in that head? But yeah. But on the flip side of it, then there were things like this Continuum Blade. And I remember giving Ant a sketch. And in my sketch, I had a little stick figure. It was actually a triangle for the base. And then it was kind of floating there in the center of almost like a bazaar type thing, from a more of a Middle Eastern type feel, more of like an Aladdin type feel. And I had then basically time kind of in space all around this thing where I drew these little I drew like these little planets, right, and solar system moons and whatnot, kind of spinning around the character. And I was like, yeah, I want something like this. And it was one of those ones that Ant then took, and he was like, "I like it. I like it. I don't know if we can get someone to do it." And then he came up with an idea for it, and he tagged it on, and then he just let Elliot, or excuse me, Laura, run with it.
Yeah.
Just it was
Basically
fantastic.
for this one, so Sean's kind of idea was the mage was always coming from this place of being a master of the cosmos, like space and time. And so Sean was like, hey, it would be cool if like the mage was kind of acting as like the center of a solar system for her ultimate, and has all these kind of like planets like whipping around her almost like an astrolabe or something like that. And the planets are kind of like pummeling the enemy. But in play design, before we did this final art, so I always had that sketch, like kind of. So he sent me that sketch. I like the idea of creating this visual where the cosmic mage was kind of like the center of the solar system. Like that to me was a great idea. But in play design, we ended up changing the way the card worked to where all the mage's ultimate does is she kind of cheats time, and she can, it's almost like a portal where she can create additional moments where they don't exist, like moments in time. And so I wanted to somehow keep Sean's original idea but incorporate time in some way, so that we had the total kind of like space time vibe going on. And so I was like, well, what if she's backed by this thing that still kind of represents the sun? So if you look at her, you can still kind of see she is the sun, and surrounding her are these kind of abstract planetary orbits with like, you know, like planets and things that are kind of like whipping around her. But what she's doing is with her two hands, she's literally forming the hands of a clock. And so around her is a segmented circle that's meant to evoke, you know, like the hours in a day, or like the face of a clock. And then behind her is a wormhole. And so when you kind of like put all this together, you get this like cosmic space-time vibe where she's the center of the universe, but at the same time she's like warping into the frame through a black hole. And it just creates this feeling of like, you have no idea where she is, you have no idea how she got there, but it just like, it looks cool. You know. And that's really kind of like where this came from. Full credit to the artist, like she invented that entire ring around the mage, like that whole kind of you know, like Eastern, like that vibe of like the filigree with the little constellations in the center that are kind of acting almost like hours on a clock, but you know, they're distinct in their own way. Like that was totally something that they invented, and just phenomenal job.
Yeah. While Ant, you pick up another one, I'm going to take some of these questions here.
Sure.
To Astragu's point, we already answered that one, Blue Counterspell, or at least we talked about it. You followed up here with, please explain further how an artist changed your idea of how the game would be played because you saw the art. So I don't know if we want to say how the game would be played, but how an individual card can interact. We usually, for the way we have our tests set up, or as we have a generic idea for what the card is that we want to have, what the card mechanics does, and then usually Ant will go and draw a little stick figure on it for us, and that little stick figure is basically our internal play test, how we feel this card should happen. Then from that, essentially, we go and we actually talk over how we want the card to interact, find the artist that we feel fits what we want. And we actually have to pair artists to the image and what colors and like what their works are. So there is all that going on in there. If the art comes back ever so slightly different, like it has a different ever so slightly feel to it, we can change the event of what the card actually does. But for the most part, it's just minor things like that, where we're changing a single card's rules text. It's not something we do either that is like common, right? So taking that back one step further, then to answer your question, how the game is played, an art isn't going to drastically alter the fundamentals of the game. Yeah. God. Okay. Yes. the art isn't going to drastically alter the fundamentals of the game.
This is an Ant
but
original.
What it will do is it will ever so slightly guide us if we feel the art was slightly different than what we wanted to portray as the rules text, and we'll go and we'll change it up ever so slightly.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give you an example. Ready?
Yeah.
So I pulled this up. So I don't know, honestly, if any of you, I swear, if any of you in chat in like the next 5 minutes can tell me what card this is, because this is a sketch that I made that I sent to an artist. We used to play test with this exact image. It's a card that we printed, but when we're doing our initial play tests and our internal play tests, these are the images that we work with. Because basically what we do is we create the cards and then I mock them up and I try to just do some really fast stick figure drawings, because when we're playing in Tabletop Simulator, which is what we use to do a lot of our play tests, it becomes daunting to have to constantly hit Alt and see the card get big so that you can read what it does. So by having a recognizable piece of art when it's in your hand, you can quickly just determine like, oh, that's this card, I know how it works, blah blah blah, and you can just play it, right? And so sometimes, and it's rare that this happens, but sometimes the sketch actually works rather well with like what the mechanic of the card is, and so we'll carry it all the way through, and have an artist give us kind of like a final version of it.
So, Ant, what is this card?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. I can't remember what the name is actually. Let me pull up the name.
I mean, do you want the card name, or do you want the
file
name?
I don't remember what the art name is.
I'll see if I can pull it up in the meantime as well.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
here, I got it.
But to your point, basically, that's Blue Counterspell. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Oh, it's called So this was originally called Reckless Attack. That was like our internal name for it, and it ended up being this. So this is Shield Spear, right? So this has like a kind of a cool story to it. So sometimes in the art, what we try to do, and this is a little like what Blue Counterspell you're asking, is we try to have the art inform the viewer what the card does. And the reason we do that is because for the same reason that like in some other card games, like creatures that have particular abilities, they'll have similar art. So like if the creature flies, it might have wings, right? And so that way when you're playing the game, at a glance, when you look at that card, you can think, oh, that card flies, right? The visual allows your brain to kind of like shorthand some of the information, and it makes the game easier to play. So in any chance that we could do that, we tried to do that. So for example, when a card is more likely going to block damage than it is going to dodge damage, we tried to make that art look like somebody raising a shield or bracing themselves or standing firm and like blocking a lot of damage. Whenever a card had a super high focus value and was most likely going to cause dodging of some kind, we tried to use art where it looked like the character was dodging, getting hit in the art, as a way to kind of like reinforce those mechanics a little bit. In this card from the Warrior, what you do is you can discard a block in order to make this attack ranged and deal more damage. And so what we did is we envisioned it as a spear that you could throw, and the tip of the spear is shaped like a shield, as like a tie-in to the fact that you're literally throwing a block at your opponent. And so that's really the kind of like the concept behind this image. But it started here, so don't ever forget that. This is where it came from.
I love the squiggle arms.
I don't know why his head's on fire, but that's okay.
I think it was because it was an aggression type thing.
Yeah,
And
maybe.
we were going for the red.
Who knows? I don't know.
Let's see what other ones. Mirror blades, great, are healing hammers. Those are the names for the files if you wanted to pull either of those up. HH is actually the file, or yeah, disengage is great. Backflip.
Right. Oh, so here's another cool one. Okay, so actually, the original here. So I'm going to tell you a neat little story about these guys. What was the original one? Let's see. It was card. It's called Card Paint. Card Paint. Here we go. Okay. So in this image, what we asked for was, so this is both Shield Kick and the card Defend. And what we asked the artist to do is we said, hey, we want you to paint us a knight with their shield raised, ready to block an attack. And we want you to paint a monk kicking the shield away. Right? And so we got this image back and absolutely loved the style of armor on this knight. Like just thought this was like the coolest thing ever. Unfortunately, it was so late in the game that we couldn't use this knight as like one of our characters because we had already established our 7 characters. Otherwise, chances are Sean and I would have probably made this one of the 7 somehow. That like we just loved the way that this looked. And so what we did instead was we tried to commission another one of these knights. And so what you see here is a female version of that knight doing an attack on, a ninja this time, right? And so really what we're doing is we're establishing lore, essentially, where now we have 2 knights who are obviously from the same army because they have similar armor. One of them was fighting a monk, one of them was fighting a ninja, and so now it feels like they're part of the same world, right? Mm-hmm. And so then the third thing that we did was
pull up setup strike.
Right, is that the name of it?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
It's called
setup strike.
Setup strike. Okay. Yeah. So then on one of the monk cards, we had the monk doing setup strike on one of these soldiers, right? And so we kept kind of like dropping them into the world. And what's funny is that this particular artist pointed out to us, they're like, hey, these are kind of like your stormtroopers, aren't they? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, every image you've shown me of these knights, they're failing. They always miss, or they get kicked, or they get punched, or something. And so that was an accident. But now I kind of think of these guys as like our stormtroopers, so to speak. So whenever I need, or Sean needs some form of spell fodder, now we always have these little knights that we can pick on.
Careful, yeah. Let's not get sued by Lucas or anyone like that. Lucasfilm.
Yeah, well.
But yeah, no, I hear you completely.
These guys are actually really, 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 really accurate. We just never give them ranged.
That's how that one works.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else is there to go with? We can go with how about commission 1 final Nugan?
Sure.
Okay, yeah. No,
we'll do that one next.
Fun.
So this one quickly. So this is an example of where something that an artist did informed our later commissions. And so if you remember the Mage Ultimate, right, where we have that like kind of like sun in the background and everything, we loved the way that looked. And so for this Mage card, this is alternate timeline. we thought it would be cool if we took that same image and kind of peeled it apart into two totally separate images to really communicate the idea of a split timeline, right? Making different choices.
You remember, you know what this reminds me of? Every time I look at this card reminds me of well, yes, A, you're 100% Ant's 100% right on that, but B, in Sean's 90s mind, right? I'm immediately thinking, remember those little visors you used to get for the 3D movies that you used to go to?
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's exactly what this reminds me of. Like
Yeah.
it's literally peeling back time into two different avenues. One, the red side, and one, the blue side. Which, if you put them together, voila, 3D.
Right. But the other thing too, it kind of reminds me of DNA, RNA, like how you like rip the DNA apart, and then you get like the two different strands.
Yeah, I can see that too.
But anyway, so what was the one that you wanted to pull up?
I was gonna say Commission One Final, File Thean Nguyen.
Commission one final. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's pretty.
Yeah. So I also just love this one as well. It's dismissing this fiery blast, but it's not just dismissing it by any means. It almost has like tendrils of space essentially, and that's always spoken to me with this little red butterfly thing going on in the bottom right corner. And I know it's not supposed to be that, but it reminds me of like the butterfly effect, and I don't know why, but this entire image has always kind of been, oh, that's kind of a unique take. And every time I look at it, it's like looking at a cloud where I see something a little bit different. I'm like, I think the artist did this.
Yeah, I really love the styling of a lot of the Mage's cards, where it creates this like in the smoke of the fire, it looks like a nebula. You know, like a lot of her motifs are space oriented, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And really even like the detail in this, like on her cloak, you know, like her cloth is so intricate and cool, and like I almost want to like buy this scarf. Like my wife would love it. Like it's so cool. And it's crazy, like you don't even get to like really see this like on the card, like, but you can really kind of like appreciate this kind of stuff you know, when you can look at the full image. All right, so we'll do a couple more, Sean. How about you pick two more and I'll pick two more, and then we'll wrap it.
Okay, that sounds fair.
So you pick that one, I'll pick one.
Yeah.
I want to do Shadow Bow. Ugh, because Shadow Bow is sweet. Yes. Okay. So our assassin has, and this is an idea that Sean had. He has 4 arms. And his lower arms are half the size of regular arms, and they're half hands. They only have a thumb and 2 fingers, whereas the assassin's main hands have actually 4 fingers and 2 thumbs, so 6 total digits, right? So they are literally half hands. These like little mini arms, and the idea was that the assassin was our subtlety character, so he's like shifty and you never really know exactly what he's planning or thinking, and so Sean came up with this idea of like, what if he always has these like little arms they're always doing something, like off camera or in the shadows or like underneath his cloak, or maybe they're like, you know, applying poison to a dagger or pulling a knife out of a pocket, or just always kind of like doing something shady, right? And in this particular image, the half hands are actually the hands that are doing the casting. So the two hands are outstretched, and they're actually summoning this bow of shadow energy, and the main hands are the ones that are using the bow. And so I thought that was like a really cool tie-in that the artist did, where he's kind of, you know, utilizing these two different hands for different purposes. But I think this is just like so much detail in here. It's so neat.
I feel like it's straight off of a like a vellum almost, the way it feels to me.
Right.
So I'm torn on this because I kind of do want to go and bring up Furious Blows, but
That was gonna be my last one.
okay, then I'll let you pull up Furious Blows because then I feel good about it. Then let's go to I want to feature an artist maybe that hasn't yet been talked about here. Let's see.
Oh,
did we
I gotta
go
do
through
two more because we haven't done. Oh no, yeah, we did. We did Enraged. Anyway, go
did we
ahead.
do Melissa?
No. Oh, we have to.
Bring Melissa up, man. People I
Area
think are gonna
Tarka.
love. Yeah, either the Tarka or the Prayer. Like they are fantastic pieces. It's
Hungering
Cloud
Yeah.
and Healing Light are
Right,
the names.
Right. Here we go.
Yeah. Sorry, there's different names from the art pieces versus the card's final name after many playtests. Yeah, zoom in. It is so this piece. I can't. What it means and what lore wise is something. This is one of those ones, blue counterspell, that we actually came. The art inspired the lore more so. But this piece, the amount of detail in just like these little skulls and to have this essentially eclipsed black hole type of thing going on here in the background, it can be taken either which way. It is a strong contrast of what looks to be a prayer. So this is going to be the essentially a prayer going on down here in the bottom, which is the opposite of this card specifically, because the other one has the healing light, and you saw this in the game. But this attention to detail, these small rings, all this darkness and light really gives a contrast that I don't know. Ant can probably talk more about the commissioning of this one because Ant did most of the idea and the concept behind this. But this one was like, this piece blew me out of the water when I saw it. That's the best I can say. I don't want to ramble too much on this.
Yeah, I mean, for this one, we had we basically had these generic spells that they were the idea was their attack. One of them is an attack that's not an attack. That was like the premise. So like a lot of our magic spells in the game, they deal damage. They're attacks. So they're like, you know, a fire sword or a wind blade or something, right? But really the question was like, well, what if I target something at you, but the intention isn't to deal damage. The intention is to like curse you or make you sick or something. And so that was really the initial kind of idea. And so originally I wanted this to be one of the ones that were kind of two images that would work together on one card, or one image that worked on two cards. And so I asked the artist, I was like, hey, can you do just some generic like a witch, like an evil looking witch who's trying to like curse a lawful good looking paladin girl. And that was really it. That was like, I was just like, can you just do a sketch of that? And so she sent me back 3 sketches, and what I ended up doing was taking all 3 of her sketches and I mashed them together into one image, and I sent it back to her, and I was like, do you think you could do this? Because if you could do this, I think this could be like one of the strongest images in the set. And so she was like, she delivered an unbelievable concept that, as Sean said, like when I finally sent this to him, it like made his brain just like almost explode with lore. Like he was like, okay, so this girl's name is this, and like this other girl is this, and they fit into the world because, you know, these are their jobs and they do this thing and they have this overarching, like he just laid out like this huge incredible story, and all of it was just inspired by this one image.
Yeah. So real quick, gonna interject. Don't want to go too much into the story on that, and I appreciate you not going into the story just because that could be eventually used down the line for us. And
Right.
I just it was, but it as Ant said, this commission just blew my mind, and I immediately just started storytelling for who this woman is, and who this other woman is down on the bottom on the ground. So I loved it. But Ant,
Yep. Okay, so then I will
before you go, scroll in some of those skulls, please.
Oh, sure.
Just teeth and everything. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so we actually, I mean, we use this for, so fatigue. The fatigue counter is like, I think the art is just this.
It's on the left side, yeah.
Because like that alone, like the detail is just like so cool. And like the use of like purple and turquoise and just colors that I would never
bronze
even like think, you know, to use for something like that. But
there's some teal in there too. Oh,
anyway.
All right, sorry. Go.
Yeah, so
take us home.
My last one, I think, for the night, and the one that we should end on,
yeah,
is this one here. Furious Blows.
Yeah.
So this this piece, if you look at the card that it's on, it has a very weird attribution to it, rather than just having the artist. So every one of our cards has an artist credit on it. The bottom left part of the card, it'll say artist : and then the artist's name. For this particular card, it says Trifecta : artist's name, and the artist is Mike Burns. So the reason that it says Trifecta is because Mike, not only did he do the art for this card, but he also designed the card, like the mechanics of the card, and he also named the card and wrote the flavor text. So the entire trifecta, essentially, of the card is that he designed it, he named and wrote for it, and then he painted it. So the entire, like literally the card, like the whole card is just, it's Mike's. Like every creative aspect of it, he did. So Mike he's a really good friend of mine. He did a lot of playtesting with us early on when, Varia wasn't even Varia. It was a paper game, like it very early in the process. And he expressed some interest in, trying out some designs, and this was one that he created. It's the card that I won the game with tonight. But it's been unchanged since he proposed it in one of our early playtests. And the image itself is just so cool. It's to me, it speaks to exactly what we want this game to be, which is a first person, in your face action RPG that you play using cards. Like this is a point of view of you getting punched in the mouth. Like that's what this image is, and that's what we wanted the game to be. We wanted the game to be a punch in the mouth for the trading card game genre. Like we didn't want to do the same old thing where it's like, okay, we're going to summon a bunch of minions and we're going to slowly ramp up turn after turn, like, start at 1 energy, go to 10, draw a card per turn. Like we didn't want to. We basically threw the rule book out. We're just like, we're not doing any of those things. We're making something that's totally different, totally new, fresh for the genre, and that's exactly what this image is. Down to the fact that this guy has a split lip and cauliflower ear, which is only something that, like, if you're into wrestling or MMA, like, that you'll even know what that is, right? And it's like, it's people who get punched in the head a lot, their ear swells up and they get this thing called cauliflower ear, or like wrestlers get it from, rolling around on a mat. But this is just like, to me personally, like this is Varia. Like if I could pick one image, if I had to pick one image that I think speaks to what this product is, it's this. Like, this is the image.
Yeah. I have nothing to add to that other than make sure you zoom in, because there is details in this that are going to be on a small scale that people are never going to see.
Look at that. Look at this. Like, come on.
Oh, yeah, you don't need to go that close, but I'll take it.
I went a little too far. Hold on.
Yeah, you're
like that.
Yeah.
Look at that grim, like that look, like those. It's just,
it's a glare.
But it's more. It's more. It's like it's the difference between like when you get in a fight with somebody and they look mad, that's one thing. But when they look wholly confident in their ability to destroy you, it's like scary. It's like a scary confidence, and that's what I see in this one. Like that's what I love about this one, is like it's like scary confident. Like
I see rage. I see pure filtered just anger seething straight through his eyes. If he could burn straight through me, that's exactly what I would.
But that's what I'm saying, because it's calm. It's not like blind frustration. And
no, it's focused.
Right. That's exactly what it's focused. That's what I love about this.
So go on, take us out on.
Yeah.
All right. Any last questions? Anything from the community?
Cool. Well, thanks guys for hanging out with us, guys, girls, for hanging out with us this late. We basically did a double episode tonight, but that's cool. It is Art Week after all. So with that, we'll close out and we'll just say, as we always kind of have to plug at the end, Varia is for pre-order right now. So if you do like anything that you have seen and you want to support us, pick up a deck or two. We are actually planning on doing our official launch where we will have the product printed and ready to be shipped and sold, coming up here at the end of March. So we're going to be at the Gameskeep in Westchester, PA. So Carl, if you happen to be listening, thank you for being so generous and giving us a spot in your store. But we're going to be there the Friday night, set up, and if you want to come out, hang out, play some games, feel free. We'll be out there.
Yeah. All right. And always don't feel like you have to be a stranger. Hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up on any of the social medias that we have, YouTube. Follow us on Twitch, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.